So you get all these videos popping up online saying how a generation of young men is struggling and so on. You get these figures coming out of the alt-right like Jordan Peterson and so on saying, it's a travesty out there for young men and all this sort of thing. And yeah, it is a travesty out there for young men. But really, when it comes to young men not being able to get laid, the real reason for that is like there's a downturn in the economy. We've been living through an austere decade or so since the 2008 financial crisis. And when there's a downturn in the economy, women stop putting out as much. That's just the way things are, and that does make quite good rational sense from the woman's perspective or from women's perspective, since if you're not getting with people with money and you accidentally get pregnant, then you're not exactly in a pretty amazing situation now, are you? Even with condoms being 97% effective, it's still only 97% effective, and you do see that sort of point. Um, so yeah, and it's obviously women are not duty bound to have sex with us at all, and they're only ever likely to have sex with us if the risks are mitigatable on their part. But yeah, I mean, it's been my life anyway since I was a teenager, I suppose, and just sort of starting out in the world, just grinding against the brick wall of austerity. And that's the problem with it. When no one has any money, you can't be really a financial success necessarily, or really on any level, because no one's got any money to buy what you're selling. And you do see this, you saw this in the 1980s. Films got demonstrably worse in the 1980s because no one's spending money on films. Right. Lots of films are funded in all sorts of different ways, have independent backers and so on, and that's how things get made, really. And if you look at the IMDb top 100s or bottom 100s from the 1980s, like the best films are worse and the worst films are worse. So you have this problem of austerity coinciding in two different decades, and this the decade that's just gone, the 2010s, you could say that was very much like a new 1980s sort of decade, I think. And yeah, the impact on young men has been terrible. I'm sure the impact on young women has been just as bad, if not, well, yeah, just as bad, I'm sure. No one wants to be poor in life, really, do we? We want to have opportunity. We want to have success, monetary success, so that we can have security in life, more than we do wanting to go about spending it on frivolous and silly things. But it's, yeah, it's important that we all have money. It's important that we all have an ability to contribute to the economy. And this is why I'm a huge advocate of basic income, because I think things like basic income establish, this baseline whereby money is always going back into the system and it's always going back into the hands of the consumer so the consumer can keep spending more money. And this protects against, things like cycles of boom and bust economics, which is quite important if you want to ensure that you have an economy that's buttressed against things like financial crises in the banking financial services sector. Would be quite helpful. But that's what's going on. Like over the last 10 or 15 years, really, um, there hasn't been much of anything by way of opportunity. We've had Brexit, and we've had COVID, and we've had all this stuff going on. Now we've got the war in Ukraine, and like the real underlying issue for all of this. And by the way, the Tories have, to their credit, in the last 10 years or so, been building wind turbines like crazy. What underlines it all is energy prices and the fact that we can't get cheap enough fuel, and we got not cheap enough coal, oil, and natural gas that we need for the variety of reasons that we need those things. And I've said this ad nauseum before as well in the past. If we were to legalize cannabis, we could be utilizing it as a very effective, or the most effective, fuel oil crop, growing it anywhere on the world, eliminating the need for nitrate fertilizer derived using natural gas, and growing hemp in rotations with other crops and turning it into fuel, among other things that we can turn it into. So really, the way out of austerity is paved by changes and solutions found in policy and in lawmaking, and particularly when it comes to drug laws. I think there's an enormous amount that needs to be done, And the more that we can do this, not necessarily merely for issues such as personal sovereignty, but also to do with issues to do with energy security, we need to do this. It's very important. And what else did I want to say? Well, that's about it, really. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is like, yeah, I think that this is probably the Tories' ace in the hole, isn't it? Before the 2025 election, like 6 months before the election, Sunak's going to legalise weed. That's his ace in the hole to make sure it's still fresh in people's minds by the time of the election. It's like, firstly, given what I know stoners are like, you can do it at any point. You can make weed properly legal in Britain, and you will get elected by stoners. That is how that will work. And you will beat Keir Starmer. And there's not just stoners, but I've spoken to loads and loads of people about this issue of cannabis legalization. Most people are in favor of it. It's really becoming like, quite a few like really right-wing weirdos who aren't in favor of it, cannabis legalization. And there's just so many different arguments that you can level in favor of doing so, that the piddling issue of that it might cause psychosis in some people, like, is asinine and trivial, not worth addressing, since the fact of its being illegal does nothing at all to prevent people from getting it, for one thing. Nothing at all. It does nothing at all to prevent people using cannabis. Secondly, it does not cause psychosis in the way that you think it does. It causes psychosis reliably in all cases for people taking it, in much the same way that you can say that after you've had a couple of beers, you're psychotic, which people in certain health services in this country, or certain people in the health services in this country, would like to assert that that's the truth about psychosis. It's like the same as drunkenness. Like, so you're locking people up for that? Like, you're manning the drunk tank, is that it? Asinine. Totally ridiculous. A waste of money as well, also the mental health services.